So what if I told you that the apex predator, one might say, in your neighborhood isn't a coyote or a hawk, which, for a neighborhood is what I would assume, and I'm sure what you would assume as well. But if it's not a coyote or a hawk, then what is it? Actually, the creature that is fundamentally changing the ecology of your backyard is, your dumb, fluffy tabby cat that sometimes falls off the back of your couch. I mean, mine did. The little creature who seems to be taking up all of the space in your bed. I once watched a documentary called Lion in Your Living Room, and I looked at my cat like, not you. But after doing some research, I was like, maybe she was a lion in my living room. Thinking about my cat and cats in general really forces a complete mental shift because we, or at least I, am so accustomed to drawing a hard line between nature, which, is like wild and untamed, in our domestic lives. But honestly, that line is just an illusion. So without further ado, welcome to my podcast, where I will be talking about domestic cats and their impact on biodiversity and the blind spot in the application of nature conservation laws. I was shocked by exploring yet a largely ignored ecological footprint that the domestic cat has, and even after looking at the data, I still can't believe it. Today I'm going to be pulling insight from 3 different sources: a 2013 systematic review of the U.S. wildlife mortality, a 2020 global GPS cat tracking study, and a 2020 legal analysis of international nature conservation laws. My mission, one might say, is to understand the domestic cat predation, understand how cats are even able to do so much damage, and examine the legalities that both condemn their actions but also take little to no action against them at all. So whether you like cats or not, be ready to look into the world of domestic cats. Okay, first, to really understand the behavior of individual cats, we have to start by zooming out, right? We need to look at a macro level damage. So this 2013 systematic review by Lawson and his colleagues looked at wildlife mortality in the United States, and the sheer volume is insane. Because again, cats on average are between 8 to 10 pounds, so how much damage can a cat really do? Apparently a lot. Free-ranging domestic cats are estimated to kill between 1.3 and 4 billion birds every single year, like in the US alone. And believe it or not, the impact on mammals is even more severe. They estimate between 6.3 and 22.3 billion mammals annually, and that's billion with a B. And I remember reading that and having to double check because I was like, there's no shot a domestic cat can kill this much stuff. Okay, yeah, birds, will run into skyscrapers or power lines or whatever, and by mistake, a mammal might die by ingesting some pesticide or poisoning. So surely that has to be the largest cause of death by unnatural ways. But genuinely, research from Blanchard in 2013 says that domestic cats are likely the single greatest source of direct human-caused mortality for U.S. birds and mammals. They far exceed all other factors combined. But anyone who knows me knows I like to play the devil's advocate, or cat's advocate in this case. So let's question the numbers, because local cats killing billions of animals is insane. So how do we actually know this is factual? Well, this is exactly why the 2013 study was so groundbreaking. It wasn't just a single local survey in one town, it was meta-analysis. They compiled dozens of local studies and rigorously adjusted for variables that unusually skew the data. One of my cats was not a hunter at all. Sometimes she couldn't figure out how to get back into our house. But my other cat, now she was fierce and killed and brought some animals into our house. It was kind of a lot and it was a little gross, and my mom was not very happy about that. But that's not the point. The point is that researchers factored in studies showing that cats actually consume or just abandon the vast majority of their kills out in the field. So we never even see them. So the numbers aren't guesses, they were built on confidence intervals. That means we are only seeing a tiny fraction of the actual impact when they bring something home. Not my cat, a devoted cat parent like myself would say. No way she took out dozens of animals and small rodents a day. And that's where the researchers make a really crucial distinction. They split the culprits into 2 categories: owned pets and unowned pets. Unowned cats, which include feral populations, barn cats, strays, and managed trap, neuter, and return colonies, cause the vast majority of this mortality. We're talking about 69% of bird deaths and 89% of mammal deaths being driven entirely by these unowned populations. So while our outdoor pets are definitely contributing, the bulk of this ecological impact is coming from cats living entirely outdoors without a specific owner or home. The common defense for outdoor cats, especially barn cats or city strays, is that they're providing a service, pest control. They're keeping invasive rats and house mice in check, but the data reveals a completely different reality. Native species actually make up the vast majority of the birds killed. In the suburban and rural areas, 75 to 100% of the mammalian prey are native mice, shrews, voles, and rabbits. That flips the narrative completely. This isn't urban rat control at all. This is an active, massive drain on native biodiversity. And we're not just talking about a few nuisance rodents disappearing. We're talking about systematic pressure on the food webs that sustain native ecosystems. So that poses a massive question. If unowned cats are doing a bulk of the damage, what exactly are owned pets doing? To understand that, I'm going to look at a 2020 study by Roland Kays and colleagues, which gives us a look into the daily secret lives of domestic cats. And this was hardcore research. This wasn't just Citizen Watch or the occasional tracking with binoculars. This was a massive global citizen science project. Volunteers across 6 countries attached tiny GPS trackers to 925 pet cats. And the findings were remarkably consistent across the globe. Whether that was the United States, the UK, Australia, or New Zealand, pet cats have extremely small home ranges, on average a 100-meter radius around their home. Out of over 900 cats, only 3 roamed more than 1 square kilometer. The vast majority stayed hyperlocal. And that tiny range is the key to understanding their ecological impact. In natural ecosystems, the predator's territory is dictated by calories. If prey is scarce, the predator expands its range or it starves. But domestic cats break this rule entirely because they are subsidized predators. We feed them, we shelter them, we provide veterinary care. Because they don't have to hunt to survive, they can exist at an unnaturally high densities. The study documented up to 35.9 cats per square kilometer. For comparison, the theoretical maximum density for a similar wild carnivore is about 1 animal per 15.7 square kilometers. So instead of 1 predator across 15 square kilometers, you have nearly 36 cats in 1 square kilometer. That is an astronomical difference. This creates what you can think of as a hyper-localized black hole for diversity. Cats step outside, hunt purely on instinct, and then will come home and eat a bowl of Friskies wet food. And because the hunt is biologically free, there's no natural limit. Wild predators stop hunting when it's not worth the energy. Cats don't have to do that. They start the day at 100% energy and then hunt just purely out of instincts. As a result, they kill between 14.2 and 38.9 prey items per hectare per year, an impact comparable to wild carnivores but intensely concentrated. And here's something even more counterintuitive. You might think in areas with higher populations, with higher predators like coyotes, cats would roam less, but the data shows no difference. Cats in areas with coyotes behave the exact same as cats without them. The human-provided food and shelter override their natural fear. So, one could say that kibble is stronger than the coyote. So the real danger isn't cats wandering into deep forests, it's the constant pressure they place on wildlife in suburban edges, urban green spaces, and backyards. So this has been a lot of information. So let's quickly recap before we move on to what the law is doing, or more specifically, what they're not doing. We have a predator problem, breaking ecological rules. We have hyperdense populations creating biodiversity black holes, and we have billions of native animals dying every year. So if this science is clear, why aren't human laws stepping in? Legal reality. A 2020 legal analysis shows that technically, domestic cats are classified globally as an invasive alien species because they were domesticated in the Near East and have no native range elsewhere. Under international treaties, governments are required to control or even eradicate invasive species that threaten ecosystems. In fact, the EU legal ruling interprets allowing cats to roam freely in protected habitats as deliberate killing of native species. Not because of intent, but because the outcome is foreseeable. If you allow a known predator into a protected habitat, you are accepting that it will kill the species in that habitat. So legally, governments should be restricting free roaming cats and managing feral populations, but they don't. Why? Because of politics, logistics, and more importantly, social backlash. It's expensive, it's difficult, and people love their cats. Animal welfare advocates argue it's cruel to confine or euthanize cats, but legally there's no basis to prioritize a pet's freedom over a native species' right to exist. And ironically, outdoor cats themselves face shorter lifespans due to cars, disease, poisoning, and predators. So the failure to act isn't legal, it's political. Governments are afraid of voters, and that leads us to a broader realization. We tend to think of the biodiversity crisis as something that's far away, like deforestation in the Amazon or melting ice caps in the Arctic. But a massive part of it is happening right in our backyards. This idea completely shatters the line between nature and home. The apex predator isn't just the coyote in the woods, it's the little cat sitting in your lap. So what do? Is it ethical to prohibit the natural behavior to an animal that can't understand?